Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about the new movie, Companion. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing. That way, maybe one day I can meet Sophie Thatcher and tell her how incredible of an actress she is. This movie is directed by Drew Hancock, and the synopsis is as follows. A weekend getaway turns bloody and violent when a subservient android that's built for human companionship goes haywire. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. This movie opens as Josh and Iris are wanting to go to a weekend getaway with friends at a really nice lake cabin. Now, immediately upon arriving there, some of Josh's friends are not too keen about him bringing his robot Iris, but Iris is nearly human, and so there are some who don't care about that. Everything seems to be going decently with some tension arising, and then one morning all hell breaks loose. And it turns into Iris versus the friend group very quickly. We've seen multiple iterations of AI robot gone haywire in the past couple years, but it would have made a great reveal for them to keep that a secret until you saw it in the movie. Now, don't get me wrong, there are other twists and turns in the plot of this movie that make up for it. And what we ended up getting was kind of a campy horror thriller. But I think because of the uniqueness of the movie and because of how great Sophie Thatcher is as an actress, that the plot held my attention for the whole time and had a decent finish to it. So for me, plot gets a thumbs up. 2 is family friendliness. Companion is rated R. There's a pretty solid amount of profanity in this movie. There's multiple scenes of sensuality and sexuality, although I will say there's no nudity, so props for that. And there's also blood and gore and moments of disturbing violence. In addition to that, because I have a wide range of viewers, there is a same-sex couple that has quite a bit of focus in the movie. We see them kiss multiple times, they have some intimate conversations, so it's just something to be aware about watching the movie. Regardless of that, this is clearly not a family-friendly film, so for me, family-friendly is because of thumbs down. 3 is acting and script. Look, Sophie Thatcher is an incredible actress and is the clear standout of this movie. And she must have been getting tired because she was carrying it on her back. My boy Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows is really funny, but didn't have a ton of screen time or really anything of note in this movie. And I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I do not like Jack Quaid as an actor. I don't think that he has a ton of range, and I think that his delivery and his lines is extremely boring and dull. And so that was quite a factor in this movie since he is one of the main characters. And the script of this movie was okay. It was serviceable for what the movie wanted to be, but it did challenge my willing suspense of disbelief a couple times, and I think the reason is this. The movie doesn't really show you things about the characters, it just tells you what you need to believe about them as the story continues. And because of how abrupt that is and how dull some of the delivery is, you just kind of have to take it at face value and be like, okay, I'm choosing to believe this because you're telling me that this is how it is and I need to believe it in order for the movie to continue. So it ended up being serviceable, but not amazing. I will say though, there were a couple moments that did make me laugh, and I really wish that this movie would have poured more into that, but they chose not to. So for me, acting and script get a 50-50. 4 is character development. The ironic part about this movie is that no one really has any character development except for the robot of the movie. Like I mentioned, we're told a lot of things, but we're not really shown them. We don't really see any of these characters develop. They just are what they are because the movie tells us they are. But we do get to see Iris develop as a character throughout the whole movie. I do think that this movie could have benefited a lot by having more depth and interesting things about their characters, and maybe that's what this movie wanted. It just wanted to be a campy horror movie. But if the characters had a bit more depth, it would have been a lot more fun to watch. So for me, character development gets a 50-50. 5 is visuals and CGI. I think there was a little CGI in this movie, but it wasn't noticeable. But visually, I really enjoyed this movie. One of my favorite parts about this film are the little subtle details that the director focused on that all the other movies having to do with AI bots have not focused on. And I thought those moments of attention to detail made this movie really interesting. But once again, there were only a couple of them. And I think the desire to have more of that is because there's so much to explore there, but also because this movie was lacking in other areas, and so it needed to somehow compensate for that, but didn't. But for what we got in visuals and CGI, I enjoyed it, and it was one of the stronger parts of the movie. So for me, visuals and CGI get a thumbs up. And 6 is rewatchability. Companion is just over an hour and a half long, and by the time I got to the end of the film, I felt like it was a very appropriate runtime for it. Had they added in more interesting subtle details and more depth to the characters, there probably could have been more film to go on. Like I mentioned before, the other iterations of AI bot that we've seen in the past couple years are kind of forgettable. And though this movie is flawed, there was enough there that that made it memorable. And admittedly, Sophie Thatcher is a huge reason for that. I think that she is a fantastic actress and continues to do well. So because of that, for me, rewatchability gets a 50-50. With all these areas considered, I have to give Companion a 6 out of 10. This movie had some pretty poor character development, a halfway decent script, and a pretty dull acting performance from Jack Quaid. But Sophie Thatcher carried this movie on her back. There were some unique and interesting elements in the movie that made it fun, and it served as a pretty overall decent campy horror movie. There's definitely some cheese in there and some things I wish they would have given more focus to in light of other things, but it is what it is. So with all that in mind, if you're a fan of Sophie Thatcher like myself, or you don't mind a halfway decent slasher campy horror movie, you may want to check out Companion, but I don't think you have to do it in theaters. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Companion, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.